I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. What do LA, Rhode Island, Vietnam, and kimchi have in common? Well, they're all a part of the story behind Chi Kitchen, the business founded by this episode's guest, Minnie Luong. Minnie founded Chi Kitchen to create flavorful, handcrafted Asian foods for the well-being of its customers. But this story is about more than just food. It's a story about having a vision and the hard work, sacrifice, and risk-taking to manifest that vision into a reality. In this episode, Minnie reveals why she chose Providence as her company's home base, how her first batch of kimchi was different from the product she puts out today, the importance of paying attention to the details, what makes her kimchi stand out from others, and the unseen issues you run into when operating a food-based business. And it all started with a vision board. I've not tried your wonderful product yet. I say yet because they should. They should after this. After listening to this, hopefully they do. Who are you and what is it that you exactly do?
Yeah, so I am the founder and CEO of Chi Kitchen. We are a local Rhode Island-based company that manufactures fermented Asian vegetables. Kimchi we're known for, and we are also starting to get to be known for our fermented sesame slaw, which recently won an award, and our fermented kimchi pickles. All of our products we're an Asian food company with healthy products. All of our fermented vegetables are always going to have Asian flavor profiles. So that's very exciting, for us.
And so gonna really go further back in time here and then bring everybody up to speed on the business part. But I wanted to start, so you were born in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam?
Yeah.
So how did you get from Vietnam? Did you grow up in Vietnam and then moved here? Or how did you get to little old Rhody of all places?
Well, it's a pretty incredible story. So yes, I was born on a rice farm in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam where, generations of my family, my father was born there, it was just our ancestral land. And after the Vietnam War, my father and my uncles were put into re-education camps and faced a lot of political persecution because they were, part of like the South Vietnamese army. And so I actually escaped with my father on a boat and ended up living in 2 different refugee camps before I moved to the United States at around 3 years old.
Incredible story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you get to Massachusetts and Rhode Island, or is it a little bit of A and B?
We moved to Boston.
Okay.
I think it was 1981. We lived on Commonwealth Ave in Back Bay of Boston. This is at a time where a lot of people didn't want to live in the cities.
Right.
So I thought that was fun, when I went back with my dad. And do you remember when we lived on Com Ave? These like incredible, brownstones. It wasn't nice then, but it was a safe place to live. And then my dad bought a house in Rhode Island. They had just built that commuter rail station in South Attleboro.
Oh, okay.
And he found an affordable house to buy. And so then I moved to Pawtucket for elementary school and high school. And then after that, I moved back to Boston. So I kind of am I grew up both. I would spend summers up in Boston with family friends, but I also, have a lot of roots here as well. My parents still live in the house.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of family, I've read that like that's where your love of food started from was within your family and growing up and because your dad was a gardener and a fisherman. So how much did that influence your love of food in the beginning? And also you were going to Boston a lot just to get ingredients. Could you talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah. So, yeah, food is like the love language in my family. And when I was growing up, you couldn't buy, a lot of Asian ingredients easily at the store like you can today. And so we would take trips up to Boston to go to shopping in Chinatown. And it was really always like a really fun and exciting trip. And we would get banh mi's on the corner of like Newland, the main,
Making me hungry now.
yeah, I think they were maybe a dollar, $1.50 at that time. And I just loved all the sights and sounds. And it was just like an adventure, and it just felt really, and I think there's a lot of cultures in the world that do spend a lot of time procuring their ingredients, preparing the food, then enjoying it together. And that's kind of how I grew up. I ate dinner with my family every single night at the same time. That was routinized. I certainly don't do that with my own family and my own kids, today. But a lot of time spent in the garden. My father grew like Thai chili peppers, Thai basil, all kinds of herbs. We have a lot of herbs in our Vietnamese cuisine. My father still like fishes for squid when it's in season, and it's actually very similar to how my dad grew up too. Obviously on a rice farm, but also fishing, eating seafood, and enjoying food and family together.
So how much of that had an influence on you becoming a private chef? And that led you to LA, correct?
Yeah, so I worked as a private chef in LA, and then I also worked as a chef. My last real job, I was a chef for a tech company. I wasn't, I didn't set out to become a chef or anything like that. I'm completely self-taught. I am, good at, or I used to be good at it. I would say, I mean, the truth is now I'm not that good at it. I just basically make mac and cheese for my kids. And then once in a while I, do some entertaining and, cook for myself and my family, just like any busy person. But I was working as a waitress at a restaurant. Somehow they gave me a job. I, would always hang out in the kitchen, like when it wasn't busy, just taking in all of the sights and sounds and just the rhythm. And I loved it. And they, I asked them, I said, hey, can I cook? And they let me like work lunch. And it was totally chaotic and exciting and fun. And I love, the energy of restaurants and kitchens. And, but it was also, I think at that time, a very kind of limited place for, a young woman who didn't go to, Cordon Bleu. So I kind of got involved in lots of different aspects of the restaurant business. And I think everything that I kind of learned in every single job that I've had has really helped prepare me to launch my own business and be an entrepreneur.
And quick question, was there something specific about LA that led you out there?
Yeah. So I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I wanted to move to LA or New York because I kind of had lived in New England my whole entire life. And so I went to LA after a breakup, and my friend was like, come visit me in LA. And I was like, yes, please get me out of here. So when I went to LA, I actually met my husband, Tim, at a wine tasting. So I got back to Cambridge and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to move to LA because I think I have a boyfriend in LA. And not only that, but Tim at the time was living in this like dreamy guest house right on the beach in Santa Monica. So I was like, so I moved to LA and lived there for, 8 8 or 9 years before we moved back to Rhode Island.
I do want to get to that part in a little bit. So private chef, you're doing different jobs within the food industry, I'm assuming, or maybe not.
Well, when I first started working in LA, I worked for caterers.
Okay.
And then, but for the most part, I worked for one particular family.
Gotcha. And so when did the ideation of, hey, I want to have my own food company start? Did that start in LA? Did you always have that idea even when you were younger? Or when did that idea pop in your head like, hey, I want a food company?
I think it definitely started in LA. I mean, I have always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, I would say. The impetus was after I had my daughter. My husband actually is also very entrepreneurial as well. And he had a business. And then that ended and I was like, okay, now it's like my turn,
Gotcha.
So I wanted to start a business in LA and I actually did, some research and legwork and, talking to people. And I just realized that we're not going to put down permanent roots on the West Coast just because our families are from, the East Coast. So, and it was like, oh, we were really going to start a business and then, move back to the East Coast. And then it was just very expensive. It's expensive to live in LA and raise a family. And I knew that if I was going to start a business, I would want to put my all into it. And so we decided, we actually had a list of places. We want to move somewhere that had a very up and coming food culture that was affordable, that was on the East Coast. So we looked at, it was actually between Providence and Charleston, South Carolina.
Interesting, versus you got Providence on the one hand and then Charleston, South Carolina. And it was...
I really wanted to move to Charleston.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I love like Southern foodways and, beaches and it just seemed like a very, attractive place. Tim really wanted to move to Providence. So, and he hadn't spent that much time here.
And I'd also read that Providence was on your mood board.
So, yeah, I had a vision. When we got married, we did a joint vision board.
Okay.
And so this is weird because it's like, oh, everyone's just like pasting whatever they want, My husband put Roger Federer on our vision board. And I was like, why is Roger Federer on our board? And I put kimchi. I put, all kinds of things. So when we moved to Providence, I hung up the vision board on the wall in my place in Providence. And Tim says, oh, do you see there's a picture of Providence on the vision board? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's right there. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that's I knew that it was meant to be. I mean, we did this and we made that board in 2011.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we didn't move to Providence until 2015. So it was 4 years.
4 years in the making.
Yeah.
So talking about that buildup and that making, I guess one of the questions is, actually, it's a two-parter question. One, why kimchi? And then the second part of that was, I've read that the first time you made kimchi, it didn't go too well. So I think that's interesting. Like, hey, we're going to choose kimchi.
Okay.
The thing that didn't go too well the first time.
Okay. Well, I'm okay with things not going too well. Sometimes. So the first time I made kimchi, I was living in Cambridge. I think I brined it for 12 hours and like I had to hunt down a Napa cabbage. It was like a multi-day, project. And it didn't come out good at all. It was like way too salty. It's inedible. And I was like, I was like, fuck this. I'm never making kimchi again. I'm just going to buy it so I didn't make it for 6 years. I didn't make it until I moved to LA. And I just love like the Korean food culture. I think LA is like one of the best food cities in the country. I think it is the best for the type of food that I like, which is Asian street food. And so, but why kimchi? We wanted to start a healthy Asian food company. And kimchi is the healthiest Asian food. I mean, it's one of the healthiest foods, I think, around. People have been making it for thousands of years. And I think that these types of foods that we carry forward with us, are really important and significant. And there's a reason I think our bodies are calling for it. And it just also has so much cultural significance and storytelling, and it's absolutely delicious and it goes with everything. But it's challenging. It's a fermented food. It's alive. To produce it on the scale that we do takes, it's taken a lot of time to figure out how to do it. But it's also like completely exciting. Like that kimchi that I made many, many years ago came out terrible, and it was like totally disappointing and like heartbreaking. But now when I make kimchi and it comes out great, it's so exciting, and it's like, that's the thing. There's just so many inputs into it that are kind of things that we can't control. Like I can't control the temperature outside today. That impacts, how the kimchi is going to ferment, for example.
There's a lot of variations that
Tons.
are like, you have no say in what happens.
A lot.
Gotcha.
But, that's part of the excitement when it does come out great. I mean, I think people that are into fermenting, would agree. You go down this rabbit hole, you're just making kimchi in your loft one day, and then next thing you know, you quit your job and you're living in Providence with a vision board with kimchi, and you have kimchi, a giant walk-in full of kimchi, and people are eating it and enjoying it and emailing you and talking about it. It's definitely a rabbit hole, but kimchi is just such a special food, iconic food.
Can you, now you got me hungry for, you were mentioning macaroni and cheese earlier. Now I'm thinking about the kimchi macaroni and cheese over at Royal Bobcat. I was like, I may have to get some tonight. I gotta figure that out. Got me hungry now. Can you walk through, just maybe a scaled down version of the process of, like, hey, I'm going to make kimchi. It's like, all right, here's the ingredients I need. Here's the process. And then all the way to, like, I'm enjoying eating it. Can you walk through that kimchi making process?
Yeah. So kimchi means salted vegetable. And there's really a lot of different ways to arrive at kimchi. So, we have come up with our optimum way of doing it for our purposes, which
Gotcha.
is to sell it in retail stores and in food service for, consumers. The first part is you chop the cabbage, the Napa cabbage. What size you chop it really makes it matters. So we do kind of like a quick, type of kimchi. We chop it up for you, so you don't have to really chop it up at home. But there's ways. Like traditionally, people will like ferment whole heads of cabbage or half, bigger pieces that they would leave, sometimes bury in the backyard. For the longer winter kind of fermentation, those are bigger pieces. And I think that's what I did when I originally first made kimchi for the first time. I did like a whole head, half a head, big pieces. And But anyway, how we do it, we chop it into smaller pieces so it's like kind of ready to eat, and then we brine it with salt, and that is the most important part of kimchi making. You have to get the right amount of salt. And like I said, if you chop it a certain way, the salt is correlates to kind of how you chop it too, because that's when it can get too salty. So we have a very, very exact method of knowing how much salt. At home, you can be a little bit looser. Do you know what I mean? But there is pretty much like a standard formula. And then we do all the other ingredients. We let that brine, and then we wash the cabbage, rinse off the salt, and then we mix in garlic. We make a garlic, ginger, red pepper paste, and then we add in chopped daikon and scallions, and you mix it all together, and then you ferment it for a couple days. Depends on the temperature. Our kitchen has so much lactic acid bacteria, like basically anything would like ferment there. It sets itself up so consistently. Of course, we have we have a fermentation room that the temperature's consistent. So then after a couple days, it's done. And you can let it kind of continue, depends on like your level of how much you like it. And then you can stick it in the fridge. It'll last, months. I mean, my motto is like never ever throw out kimchi. It's never happened. And yeah, so you could be eating it within a couple of days.
Wow, that's a heck of a process. And again, like you were saying, all those things those little variations out of your control. So does that mean that does that make it hard to get things consistent because there are so many things out of your control, or is there like little variations where like for the most part it'll taste the same, but like each batch may taste a little different? Or
yeah, well, we have gotten really good at consistency, I would just say overall. The thing that actually makes it challenging is that once it's fermented, it's alive and it's going to continue to ferment. And it's going to become more, acidic over time. When you put it in the refrigerator, it slows down the fermentation, but it's still going to ferment. So if you're looking at it from like a consumer point of view, if it's sitting on like the grocery store shelves for a long period of time, it's not selling. If it's not moving, then it's going to become more fermented and potentially more bubbly from the CO2 gases. And some people like that. And some people, if they're new to it or they don't like it. Personally, I don't like it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't love that sensation and mouthfeel of like that tingly bubbliness of kimchi.
Gotcha.
That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for like the garlic and the acidity and the crunch and all of that. But so that's like the challenge. So we make kimchi and it goes out. Like we try not to keep any inventory. We don't make any basically extra to keep. So, and luckily our product does move pretty fast. So we don't really have those concerns. And then the way that we pack the kimchi into the jars, we cold pack it. And so that helps kind of reduce like the bubbliness. Because I think when we first started out, we definitely were not as consistent and we had to learn, and we would get emails. Like I would hate getting these emails in like middle of the night, like, oh, like your kimchi exploded, and so that luckily we don't get those emails very much anymore, and it caused us to kind of change our process.
So speaking of, the process, want to switch gears from a process standpoint because you're making a food product, right? And that's going to have its own challenges when it comes to like businesses and paperwork and regulations and things like that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what are some of the business related stuff that maybe people don't realize, or like, hey, here's all this like legal work, legal stuff that I have to do, or all these regulations I have to follow, all this like weird licenses. And how much of that did you have to do in the beginning when you were just starting, and then how much are you still doing now? Like, is there still like licenses or business stuff that comes out of nowhere? They're like, oh, I didn't know we needed to get that thing or get that license or get that paperwork done.
Yeah, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of regulation, particularly being food manufacturer. Um, and when I first started out, I think I got a lot of mixed messages. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to get, a license from this town and, all of that. I think we when I first started, we started at Hope in Maine, so they were helpful. And it was just helpful to know other people that were, doing business, starting food businesses. So, I think anyone that wants to start a food business should talk to other people that have done it or are doing it, because that was extremely helpful. But from like a food safety standpoint, we're, regulated by the FDA. And there's like a whole like world of like food safety regulations that we have to follow. We're actually in the middle of doing a third-party audit, which we have to pay someone to come travel here. We have to pay their travel expenses, pay them like thousands of dollars every year to like make sure that we're following all of the, good manufacturing practices and food safety. And it's a lot of work. Like it's like almost like a full-time job for, Tim is overseeing it, but that's something, I kind of am into food safety and like, I kind of get nerdy about that. And obviously you want to have the safest environment, to manufacture any food that people are consuming. But that is something that, I was not an expert on when I first, got into it, and have since, I'm a PCQI, like, so I have like a certification on like person in charge of like, food safety. And I think we're a small business and it's a huge amount of paperwork, a lot of it is a lot of paperwork, a lot of regulations, things that we, choose to do. We don't have to do the third party audit.
I was going to ask, like, is there ways you can outsource that, or like more services where like they take care of that part of your business and you just focus on the food, or do you have to like do a certain amount of it?
No, no, there's consultants and people who do that, but I believe that you should definitely have that piece of your business,
Gotcha.
In your own hands. So, and you don't have to do the third party audit, but if you want to grow and do business with bigger, entities, they want to see that. So like if I'm trying to do a deal,
so you're selling like Whole Foods right now, right? So like Whole Foods would want to see that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think they are requiring it for certain producers, or I'm not sure. Okay. Depends on the risk.
So you mentioned Hope in Maine earlier, and I had another guest on here, Amber Jackson. She was talking about
I know
Hope.
Amber.
Yep, so she was talking about Hope in Maine. Hey, Amber. Amber, we're going to start that Bob's Burgers podcast, I promise. She is a Hope in Maine graduate, and so are you. So can you explain a little bit of what Hope in Maine does and how important, like what stage did Hope in Maine come into your business? Was it at the very beginning? Was it before you even started?
Yeah, no, I moved here. I heard about Hope in Maine when I was living in LA. I heard about Ziggy and his pickles. I don't know if you remember Fox Point pickles.
No, unfortunately.
Okay. Anyways, I saw that they were building this like $3 million incubator kitchen. And just with my experience, knowing about kitchens, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. It must be completely state of the art. That's a huge investment. So I thought, okay, this is what I was talking about, like moving somewhere that was up and coming, because I think it had just opened, and I was like, okay, I have a place I can start my kimchi, and so that was a hugely critical part of us moving to Rhode Island as opposed to Charleston. They, at the time, they were a hub and an incubator and I think they still are, for food businesses. And it was kind of in the beginning days of the Hope and Main when we were there. And I know since then, they've done a lot in terms of having tabletop shows for producers. They're not only just trying to like help people make the product, but they're, helping them become better entrepreneurs and creating pathways for them to actually sell their products. And I mean, it's staggering how many food businesses have grown out of Hope and Main in the years since.
At the time that you were at Hope and Main, did they help you with like the business paperwork and regulations and things of that nature? Or were you there more for, hey, there's this really, this multi-million state-of-the-art kitchen?
I was just there for the space.
Gotcha.
Because
okay.
I wasn't about to make kimchi at my house.
Gotcha. All right.
But they definitely were helpful, and just the community of people were helpful. But I'm not the type of person that expects other people to, obviously, if I need help with a problem, I will ask questions and, use my resources. But I like to figure things out on my own, so I don't think anyone helped me do paperwork. I just figured it out. And then, once you do paperwork, you kind of usually don't have to do it again,
Okay.
which is nice.
And there was also the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program.
Wow, you really did do your research.
I try. Can you walk through what that program was and what that program provided for you in terms of, launching the business?
Yes. So it's a free program for small business owners. And I think Rhode Island is the only state that has a statewide program. It's amazing program for any small business owner. The curriculum is like world class. The teachers are amazing. That they have coaching, coaches on staff that help. I'm still, in contact with a lot of the coaches if anything ever, comes up. I have an alumni network, but basically it's like a crash course MBA for small business owners. And like you work on like a growth plan. So a lot of small business owners are always like, they say, working in their business and not on their business because we just have so much going on.
A lot of moving parts you have to take care of and think about.
There's a lot. And as your business grows, those things grow too as well. So I definitely it gave me a lot of confidence. I had my plan. I have been I've been executing it. And yeah, I think particularly going into that pandemic when, I'm so glad I did it because I did it in 2019. And I was so glad I did it because I think I would have just panicked or, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't had that kind of training. Just to be able to evaluate, is this a good move for my business? You just get a lot of tools.
How does one get into Hope and Main or that Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program? Do you sign up for them? Do they evaluate you? Certain businesses get picked. How does that all work?
Yeah, you can apply.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They may be accepting applications now. You can apply, and then Hope and Main. I don't know the specifics of how they onboard people now, but I definitely would encourage people to reach out and find out.
How did you, because I always find this interesting, how did you fund the business in the beginning?
Okay. So, I funded it by not working and collecting a paycheck.
Okay.
Just sweat equity. And I think that was probably a mistake. We can talk about that later. when I started the business at Hope in Maine, I realized I needed my own kitchen in order to scale up. I realized it very quickly. So we raised $40,000 from friends and family, and we built out our first kitchen in Lorraine Mill. And we were lucky because that $40,000 is a lot of money, but we really didn't need that much in terms of like equipment. We just needed sinks, a walk-in, tables. It's not like I needed like big capital machinery or anything crazy, or even just like a hood, which is like $30,000 just for the 6-foot hood. So that's how I did it initially, and then after I went to the Goldman Sachs program in 2019, I wrote a business plan and I got an SBA loan to double our production space. So we took that money and doubled our production space because we had to have the space in order to grow also, and that's kind of one of the challenges is like, when am I in growth mode, and how am I setting up the architecture for that growth to happen? Because you have to balance, sales and marketing with your ability to produce the product.
Actually, I was going to say this question for later, but since you're talking about growth, it makes sense to ask it now. So Goldman Sachs, it seemed like it helped you handle scaling and growth, because sometimes you read about businesses and they're good at one level, and then when they have to scale up or they have to grow, then it falls apart. So how did, besides the influence from Goldman Sachs, how did you handle growth and scaling up the business? And what advice would you give for others when hey, all right, there's this next level you're going to hit, but you need to be ready for it, because if not, and you try and attempt it, it can, maybe there's a reason why you haven't scaled up before.
Yeah, it's challenging, and it's challenging when you start off as like a small business, a little mom and pop, and then you grow, and then
you're selling from like the farmer's market all the way to hey, you're in Whole Foods. That's a jump. That's a leap.
Yeah, or you're in, New York or on the West Coast, and that's what we're actually trying to do right now, and it comes with a lot of challenges. We grew really slow, okay? But you have to have a lot of perseverance to do that, because I think now a lot of food companies just want to out of the gates, raise millions of dollars, be in thousands of stores, buy up that distribution. Really, what we did was we literally engaged with our customers, for years and years, demoing in stores and at the farmers market, and really built up a base of people who, love our product. And then we created 2 new products. And, once that trust was created, then, there's these other things. And that's one way to grow, is to have more offerings. But we're never going to have more, we're not going to create more products than we need to or want to, just to be able to try to sell more. It really has to fit our brand and our vision, and really solve problems for our customers. But I would say that, so 6 years into it, we're all about the production and quality, because we know if we have the best tasting kimchi, then we can go out and sell it. Now we're in a growth mode where we're going out, putting ourselves out there more. We're doing the Fancy Food Show in New York, for example, in a couple weeks. And one thing is, you're gonna probably need capital, in order to grow. So that's one thing. Fundraising is a whole major part of my job.
You were talking earlier about how you did this slow, right? And you're building up relationships. And I read that, you enjoy building these relationships, and, with your employees, your customers, partners. I've even seen on your website, other chefs using your product, or ranting and raving about your product. Hey, we use it in one of our dishes, or we use it at this restaurant, or even I think I was not too far from your Stock Culinary Goods. They were talking about your product.
Jan was actually in my group at Goldman Sachs.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So We're great friends.
So, that doesn't happen instantly. That takes time to build those relationships and you got to have, a hell of a product to get those good reviews, but you also have to have the talent or a knack for building relationships and the desire to do that. How did you go about building all those all those relationships, whether it's customers or, other stores or brands that you're working with? And because you're doing a great job at it, obviously. And what advice would you give for other people? Because I think sometimes you see on social media or Instagram or things like it makes it look like these businesses happen overnight. And it's like, oh, I've got X amount of followers. I should be able to like sell something, no problem. And then somebody tries to sell something to all their followers and it doesn't work. So you got to put the work in to build the relationships up. So how did you go about that? Or if you can go a little bit on a deeper level about that.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because I think, participating in, Hope and Main community, putting yourself out there and getting involved is how I kind of built those relationships. I also, teach, volunteered to teach for Farm Fresh, Rhode Island. I've taught at the food bank, Southside Community Land Trust. That's all volunteering my time, teaching people how to make kimchi or other, Asian foods. I guess it's something that I enjoy. I enjoy connecting with other people. I particularly enjoy connecting with other small business owners because, like what you said, it looks so cool on Instagram, but in reality, some of the challenges that you face, like you're not going to have that many people in your life that will understand like what it's like to deal with like inflation, of glass jars or, know the challenges of like hiring and training the right people. So like for my family, I give them a broad overview of what's going on. But they don't really want to know about the nitty gritty stuff, so it's nice to have other people that, they have similar, most people have similar challenges. If it's a problem for me, then it's probably a problem for someone else somewhere else.
And someone may have figured out the solution to the problem too.
Yeah, and sometimes the solution is just having somebody listen to you, vent, or it also feels good on my end to be able to help other businesses get started,
In that sense, just a quick side question, can running your own business or be an entrepreneur be isolating in the sense that you won't be able to, you might not be able to talk to, your friends or like about some of the stuff you're going there because they may just not understand. Or maybe they just don't have to deal with it.
No, I mean, it's definitely isolating. Like, we've had some really exciting things happen in our business recently. And I felt like, oh, I want to tell somebody, but I don't know who I want to tell. Besides, I have my husband, he's in the business, so he already knows the news. And so that's kind of, I would probably pick and choose who I would tell. I would probably tell somebody that, has their own business or is, that's probably who I would go to, first over, my family.
And so you're just saying, hey, like, one of the people that I would tell would be my husband, but my husband's in the business already, so he already knows the news. And I've heard before, it's like, hey, I've heard, people who run businesses say, don't do business with family because that brings up a whole interesting set of challenges. You are obviously doing that. You're running this business with your husband. So I think, can it be a double-edged sword in the sense like you have somebody to talk to and share like the good and bad parts of the business, like the rough times and the good times, but does that also like bleed into family life or things of that nature? And how do you balance that? Like, if anybody else is maybe running a business with a family member, it's like, how do we balance all these things so that there's not like bleed, or is
well,
that
I can speak for us. We don't.
Oh, okay.
There's no such thing as balance. It's a family affair. It has definitely its challenges. But I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. And if Tim was sitting here, he would, he would have, negatives too from his end. We have 2 young kids. also. So they're involved, and it's a family business, and we've always dreamed of doing it together, and that's what like makes it meaningful. And we both have, we're both entrepreneurial, and we both have our own strengths and weaknesses, and so it is nice. But yeah, no, we talk about Cheek Kitchen all the time. Our kids, hang out at our office. My daughter helps out at the farmer's market. And this is just the life that, we've been living for the last 7 years. So yeah, there is no balance. I mean, sure, we could go on a date night and do all that stuff. But the truth is, like, when I need childcare, from asking my family to help out, it's for work. If I'm going to ask for free babysitting, it's going to be, something to help grow, our business.
Can you describe and, possibly take us to the back to the moment where you sold your first jar of kimchi?
Oh my goodness.
And what that was like?
I don't even remember. I mean, well, it was probably at the farmer's market.
Okay.
But I will tell you, that's not a moment that actually stands out for me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't know why.
Is there...
Because I'm not good at being in the moment.
Oh, all right.
That's probably why. Because, I saw a jar of kimchi, and then I'm like, oh, what's next? But I will tell you how I got into Whole Foods.
Okay.
Which is a good story.
All right. Let's go into that one then.
This is a great story. So before I ever sold a single jar of kimchi, we didn't have our labels yet, and we were invited to this event. We were new to Providence. We were invited to this event. I think it was sponsored by Cleverhood. And they invited all these, it was a cool, building on the West End, and, this cool event. And we were like excited. Someone had asked us to do something, right? So we didn't have our labels yet. So we printed out our labels on like our home, our shitty home inkjet printer, and like cut it out the label and taped it to the jars. And this guy comes up, looks like a lumberjack, and he's like, "Oh, I love your branding." He picks up the jar and he's like, "I love kimchi and I love your branding." And I was just like, ha 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 ha, that's so funny, because like literally just taped that on. And then he's like, "Hey, and if you ever want to be in Whole Foods, I'm the local forager." And he handed me his card. So that was before I ever sold a jar of kimchi. His name, Rob Williams. He's famous in the local food world, as far as I'm concerned. And that's one of those relationships that we were speaking of. I've had, he helped us get into Whole Foods. We were in Whole Foods maybe on the shelves 6 months later. That was like a dream, and it happened in a very short amount of time. So I think, I always just absolutely love that story, because you just never know who is going to show up, Yeah,
and like who's going to possibly show up and possibly change the trajectory of everything you've been doing.
Yeah, no, that definitely changed. It was a game changer for us.
So I want to ask about another moment. And this moment, I think it's different for everybody, but I think it's interesting hearing how people gauge it. Was there a moment or series of moments for you where you're like, okay, I'm doing this full time now. Like, I'm taking this leap. Was that like one singular decision, or were there things leading up to it? Were there like signs where you're like, okay, this is like generating buzz, generating cash. Like, I need to switch over to full time. Like, how did that happen?
So I started full time. I mean, as full time as I could possibly be. And I think we were talking about this earlier. Like, one of the things I wish I had was like a part-time job while I was starting the business, because I got into a lot of credit card debt. The thing is, when I quit my job and moved here, I had a toddler, an 18-month-old. So there was a moment where I was like kind of starting the business and then, taking care of her. And then I guess the moment for me was, when are we going to put her into childcare and pay, childcare is very, very expensive, by the way. Pay someone to take care of her so that I could actually work on the business.
This is the reason why
at that point I wasn't paying myself.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. You made this move for the business, and it's like, okay, well, I got to keep working on it.
And I got into a lot of credit card debt as a result of it. Do you know what I mean? So it was a calculated, risk.
Yep.
But I think that was the moment for us. Like, we're gonna put her in daycare and pay, a ton of money. And that when you said how I fund the business, that's part of it. What we're talking about here too is like the sacrifices that you have to make. Paying $2,000 or whatever for a month for childcare so that you can actually focus on your business. That happened pretty early on. I think once we got the Whole Foods deal, and we were like, okay, I'm really going to have to make this a success.
Is there one or maybe a few things that you wish people knew about that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to your business and what you do?
Okay. Well, I guess I wish that people knew how much love, chi, energy really goes into our business and our product, like our team that makes the kimchi, all these awards that we win or just nice emails that we get. It's always so important to share that with the people that are actually making the product and putting their chi and energy. And so, that side doesn't get showcased as much. But, we really, truly are handcrafted. We hand julienne the ginger. We don't have to do that. That's not a business decision, really. I mean, the real correct business decision would try to, do as many shortcuts as possible. But that's what makes, our product Chi Kitchen, I would also just say, I think the whole family aspect of it is I don't know if people know, how important it is to me, having this business as a vehicle, teaching my kids. Like, I talked to my daughter about inflation, she gets to see me, meet the vice president. She asks about, oh, who's the new person? What's going on with them? She's like super nosy, and I hope that it will, stay that way for a long, long time to come.
What advice would you have just based on, your business, things you've gone through, maybe some mistakes have you made, the good, the bad? What advice would you have for other entrepreneurs, whether they're going to be a food-based entrepreneur or not? What advice would you have for people who are maybe listening to this going like, I want to start my business, or I got an idea for a food product? What advice would you give them?
Oh, there's so much. Well, my first advice is to choose a name that is going to resonate with your customers. You can't do anything if you don't have a name. You can't register an LLC. You can't apply for paperwork to get, a license, your health license. So start at a name. Make sure that you can get the domain name. Also, check that out. That'd be just like the first practical advice. When I first started Chi Kitchen, I went down to the farmer's market and said, "Oh, I'm taking a poll. Do you like the name Minnie's Kitchen or do you like Chi Kitchen?" And everyone said, "Oh, I like Minnie's Kitchen. I like Minnie's Kitchen." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to name it Chi Kitchen." But I did research, and I went with what I felt like, So that was one piece of advice. I would say, really I always think of the end user, the end experience, your consumers, really get to know who is your target market and what they're using it for, whatever the product is, and just make sure that you stand out. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Like, you've seen our design, right? Our brand. It's very clean. It's, we want it to be super approachable. A lot of the kimchi brands are about someone's mom. You know, I'm the only mom. I'm my mom to my kids. You know what I mean? And I get why that branding is attractive, because it's part of this storytelling, you know, of kimchi and families and mothers making it. But we went totally different. You know, we just wanted to be very clean and approachable, because what we realize is like what is in the jar is just so complex, and I think personally very beautiful, that we wanted to showcase all the beauty and complexity of what is in the jar, as opposed to having this like crazy busy label. And that's why Rob Williams picked up the jar with the taped label, you know?
It stood out.
Yeah. And that's, you know, for food products, CPG products, that's half the battle, getting someone to actually pick it up.
So we're at the end, and at the end of every episode, I always do this. I let whoever is the guest, it's open mic, hot take, say whatever you want to say. It's no more questions. It's just whatever you want to put out into the world. So the last minutes of the show are totally yours. So if there's anything you want to say, promote, floor's yours. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I do want to say, because I didn't answer the question earlier, something people don't know, but I actually chant for all of Chi Kitchen
Okay.
customers, employees, past and present. I have a chant that I do
Okay.
every day, and it involves all of our partners, our farmers, our everybody, our family, everybody that has been kind of part of this, and also welcoming other people that I don't even know. Yeah. So I guess. And we have crystals all over, and we sage. I used to be a big yogi, so I think, that's why the chi is really what we're about here.
Well, with that, Minnie, thank you for coming on to the show. Really appreciate taking your time out and just talking about the business and
this was fun.
Scaling. I had fun. Thank you so much. And now I'm hungry. Now
by the way, if you want to make that kimchi mac and cheese, there is a recipe on our website.
There, you know what? All right.
It's really easy.
Sorry, Royal Bobcat. I may not go there to get it today. I may have to make it at home now. No, actually, I'll probably still go there once in a while. But anyway, thank you so much. And until next time, everybody, keep on creating. And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks goes to this episode's guest, Minnie Luong. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, edited, mixed, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.